Hello everyone, near and far, and welcome. Grabbing seats. If you don't already know me, I'm Mary Walker Graham, the assistant curator here at the Poetry Room. And after 2 years of manning, or shall I say womaning, the Zoom controls from our home offices, AKA tiny apartment bedrooms, it is a great delight to be here in the Poetry Room itself with all of you. And with all of you out there, we are very excited to be able to continue to extend our presence out into the ether via our newly revamped YouTube channel, from which we'll be live streaming all of our events this fall. Next week, we launch our official season with an installment of our Typewriter Talk series presented by Jonah Mixon Webster, the recipient of this year's Creative Fellowship, followed by a true torrent of readings curated by Christina Davis, featuring Solmaz Sharif, Divya Victor, Victoria Chang, Lainey Brown, Renee Gladman, Rosemarie Waldrop, Ray Armentrout, Mary Ruffel, and Anne Waldman. But before we begin, tonight it is our great honor to share our venue with a longtime friend of the Poetry Room, Dr. Joshua Bennett, who is here to celebrate the release of his new book and third collection of poetry, The Study of Human Life, a bold new work that weaves together reflections on such subjects as abolition, Malcolm X, Black ecological consciousness, and the promise of parenthood. Joshua's other books include The Sobbing School, which was a National Poetry Series selection and a finalist for an NAACP Image Award, Being Property Once Myself, Ode, and the forthcoming Spoken Word, A Cultural History. He has received fellowships and awards from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Whiting Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Society of Fellows at Harvard University. He is currently a professor of English at Dartmouth College. Thank you all for being here. Please join me in welcoming Joshua to the stage.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all all right? Christina, Mary, thank you so much for your generosity in more ways than one. Hi, Pam. My wife, Pam, is here. Can we have a round of applause for my wife, Pam? Yeah. She's the best. And this book would be impossible without her grace and her imagination and persistence. So, all right, so we'll talk about a bunch of different stuff tonight. I want to read a little bit from Ode just because I never got to read from it in real life. I did, but it was also virtual life simultaneously. I was basically in my office upstairs while Pam was with our son doing virtual readings for 2 years. And so I figured it might make sense to read some of it. That's me and my dad, 1992. Shout out to Mom Dukes, who got a check from Penguin for taking the cover photo. It's always good when poetry can be a family business. So this is Token Sings the Blues, and it's for my big sister, who just moved into a new house yesterday. Token sings the blues. You always are almost always only one in the room. Maybe 2. 3 is a crowd. 3 is a gang. 3 is a company of thieves. 3 is, wow, there's so many of you. 3 will get you confused with people that look nothing like you. You get called Devin or Sheila. Your name isn't Devin or Sheila. You do your best not to ignore such casual erasure. You know silence will be received as affirmation, praise even, and you always affirmative. You affirmative action figure, you fantastic first black friend, you first ballot quota keeper, you almost cry when your history professor says, you know, in this country, the gold standard used to be people. Funny how no one comes right out and says things like you people anymore. It's all code words like thug or diversity hire. You diversity all by yourself. You contain multitudes and are yet contained everywhere you go, confined, like there is always someone watching you, and isn't there? And isn't that the entire point of this flesh you inherited? This unrepentant stain. Be twice as good, Mama says. As if what they have is worth your panic, worth measuring your very life against. And you always remember to measure your hair, your volume, your tone over email. You perpetually sorry. You don't know why. You apologize to no one in particular, just for being around and in your body at the same time. You know your body is the real problem. You monster, you beast of burden, you beast and burden, you horse but human, you centaur. You map the stars and pull back your bow to shoot the moon in its one good white eye. You are everything, your big sister says. And on your best days above ground, you believe her. Thank you. Thank y'all. All right, so I'm just gonna read one more from Ode. It's a poem about do-rags. So for those of you who haven't heard of Do-Rag History Month, it's because it doesn't exist. It was fabricated by the denizens of what is often called Black Twitter. But several years ago, there was a journalist who didn't realize that Do-Rag History Month doesn't exist. If you've seen the tweets, you should know this because it's like Harriet Tubman in a do-rag, then Moses in a do-rag, just various figures from different traditions in do-rags. But this journalist did not know that, and they wrote a whole essay about Do-Rag History Month as this long-lost African-American cultural touchstone. So I thought that was hilarious. So I wrote this poem, which is Ode, O-W-E-D, to the do-rag. Which I spell that way, D-U-R-A-G, because that's the way it was spelled on all the clear plastic packets I grew up buying for no more than $2, $2.50 max, unless I was at Duane Reade or some likewise corporatized venue. But who buys the majority of their do-rags at Duane Reade anyway? Who would actually wage war on the do-rag's good name by spelling it D-E-W-R-A-G, as I recently read some sad lost souls do in an article in The Guardian? This isn't a device one might use to attend to the suburban garden and its unremarkable flora, drying freshly damp wisteria with black silk or the much more common nylon rayon cotton blend. I could see D-O-R-A-G. That works for me. One could argue this version makes more sense even than the spelling I am accustomed to, reflective as it is of nothing other than itself. I have never heard the term do used in a sentence by anyone other than a long-lost colleague at Princeton who once reached wide-eyed for my high-top fade before a swift rebuke, marked by my striking his wrist, this is a true story, as if some large though distinctly non-lethal mosquito. Surely a top 6 proudest moment of anti-colonial choreography I have dared call mine in this odd, improbable life I hold to my chest like a weapon. I know. This wasn't supposed to be about them. You make me inordinately beautiful. Let's talk about that. Or how I'm 12 years old and the cape of a white do-rag billows from beneath my Marlin's cap like a sham poltergeist, flight and failure contained within a single body, worthy core of any early 2000s era New York rapper's coat of arms. I was lying before. Once, while we sat, quiet as mourners on the front porch, my father spat, "That's a nice do you have there," eyeing the soft mess of corkscrew darkness atop his second youngest son's aging face. No sign of the good hair he praised for years to family and co-workers alike. Alas, old friend, you somehow make me even more opaque, make me mystery, criminal, dope boy by the corner of Broadway and 127th, compelling respectable women to reach for smartphones, call for backup, my smooth, adjustable shadow. Like policy or fire, you blacken everything you touch. All right. Thank y'all. Y'all are so great. Feel like I'm back in church again. It's been a minute. I know a poem I'm gonna read. This is about apples. Kind of. So for my past 2 birthdays, Pam's been kind enough to bring me to this orchard upstate, and I'm from New York City, man. I mean, the apple variety, I'm sure it was out there for somebody, but we didn't have it like that. I grew up, you couldn't turn the heat on, so you just slept under 5 blankets, like long before weighted blankets were a thing. I had the original, which is, boy, put a hoodie on and get under those blankets if you want to be warm and not catch hypothermia. So when I moved to Massachusetts, which I never dreamt I would live out here, and now both my wife and son are from right here in Cambridge, I fell in love with apples and all the different names and colors and textures of and tastes of apples. So this poem was published in the New Yorker 2 weeks ago, which was really cool. If only because now I just get DMs with apple names in them from people who love apples. So maybe 3 days ago, I got Northern Spy in my inbox, which is my new favorite, and the Macoun apple, and the Honeycrisp, which is like my actual favorite, but it makes an appearance, so it wasn't in the DM. This is Dad Poem 10. You can't have apples with everything, we say to our son over breakfast, but that's not technically true. He knows this, I suspect, though his face reflects a certain understanding, as if he's willing to negotiate. Before we moved here, I knew so little of apples, their untamed array of shapes and names: Ginger Gold, Honeycrisp, Crispin, Cortland, Cameo, both Rome and Empire somehow, which feels like it must be an inside joke between members of the committee. Fuji, Wine Sap, Ruby Frost, which could be either a miracle or a plague. I can't decide which. Paula Red is a Soviet secret agent. Envy is a deadly sin. Holstein and Ambrosia have skin like a storm on a televised map. On the ride upstate to the orchard, I recount all the types to myself in a private game, select my prize in advance. Bags filled with liberty and jazz will be my aims, like any good American. 2 months earlier, it's not yet my birthday. I'm in an office in Brighton. The doctor has never seen a case quite like mine. During the test, I make every task a language game, even the ones with semicircles and blocks. This part of my mind is hypercharged, he says, like a quasar or loving dispute. That morning, I cut a Brayburn into eighths and cast the pieces into a small blue bowl, a handful of rowboats swaying. At the orchard, we are stars set loose across the mind of a boy in a field on his back, dreaming with both eyes open. We run for hours. We gather enough apples to sate ourselves for weeks on nothing but their cold red wealth. What marvels, this most metaphorical of fruits, Newtonian, Edenic, pure delight, mighty and bright. In the orchard, like a coliseum of planets you could hold in your hand. All right, thank y'all. So if you grew up in church, a benediction usually goes at the end, but I'm just gonna put this one in the middle. This is benediction. It's for my little brother, and for all of the barbers I've ever had in my life, who are always the bookish ones. Like when I was at Penn in Philly, I had Maurice, and he just had a thesaurus, by the side, and he was like, "Doc, every time you come here, we're gonna talk about the words I'm going over," and my friend, I had a former mentor who said that rhyme was a reminder of balance in the universe. And I always think about Maurice and him trying to find synonyms all the time. Just new, more beautiful ways to say what he already knew how to say. So this is Trash Part 7, Benediction. God bless the lightning bolt in my little brother's hair. God bless our neighborhood barber, the patience it takes to make a man you've just met beautiful. God bless every beautiful thing called monstrous since the dawn of a colonizer's time. God bless the arms of the mother on the crosstown bus, the sterling silver cross at the crux of her collarbone, its shine barely visible beneath her nightshade navy New York Yankees hoodie. God bless the baby boy kept precious in her embrace. His wail turning my entire row into an opera house. God bless the vulnerable ones. how they call us toward love and its infinite, unthinkable cost. God bless the floss, the flash, the brash and bare-knuckle brawl of the South Bronx girls who raised my mother to grease knuckles, cut eyes, get fly as any fugitive dream on the lam, on the run from the law, as any and all of us are who dare to wake and walk in this skin. And you best believe God bless this skin, the shimmer and slick of it, the wherewithal to bear the rage of brothers, sisters slain and still function each morning, still sit at a desk, send an email, take an order, dream a world, some heaven big enough for Black life to flourish, to grow. God bless the no. My story is not for sale. The no, this body belongs to me and the earth alone. The sea, the thing about souls, is they by definition cannot be owned. God bless the beloved flesh our refusal calls home. God bless the unkillable interior. Bless the uprising. Bless the rebellion. Bless the overflow. God bless everything that survives the fire. All right. 3 sonnets in a row, and then like 2 more joints. And then I'm gonna sip some Pellegrino, and we can all just hang out. Do we do Q&As at these? Mary, Christina? I don't know. Let's just talk. We'll just hang out. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't do this poem because we're surrounded by books. So this is about, I don't know, I guess it's about my group of friends, which are almost all scholars, poets, and ministers. I was training to be a minister when I first got to graduate school. And then I had a faith crisis, and like 2 days before my trial sermon, I stepped away because I felt like I couldn't profess something I didn't believe anymore. And I had a recent reading. This is very Baldwinian in a way, but I had a recent reading where a woman in the audience who was there with her daughter who was a poet, and we swapped copies of our books. I promise I'll get to the poem in a second. And I talked a little bit about this, and she said, "Baby, you're still doing it." I was like, man, that's so sweet. You gotta tell my mom that, you know. That's a bar. She was still doing it. So these are 3 sonnets from a sonnet crown in the book called Crown of Thorns. They said books were the way through the brook of fire blackness was. So my boys and I steeped ourselves in whatever Ivy League library shelves lent us in our late teens, early 20s, until we sparkled proper, articulate doctor of philosophy, master's, pastor, preacher, poet, scholar of arts and human sciences, trained by institutional schemes geared towards certain kinds of compliance, aesthetic and otherwise. My brother shine brightest when the lights are on. Politics honed by threat and adoration, theft of language named primary education, named home training, named lower your tone. Don't say that about the ones who love you enough to put up with such arrogance as a matter of course. Of course you are. Martyr, messiah, gangster, never survivor, son, somebody's baby boy beyond the age of 5 or 6. You see the signs of life you cannot ever own. You know the way it is. You know the way it was back then. Futility in any direction, we figured, unless you hooped or had bars like X or J, a recording booth you could use to spin those imagined lines of verse, urgent as the discourse of markets that would one day dart across our screens into poetry no one knew by that name. Or lawyers, perhaps, since we cherished argument above all other forms. Or preachers like my uncle, who drove a midnight blue Mercedes, spoke with a voice that was its own object and force, solid as the side of a destroyer. Never let them say we were aimless. Amidst Hennessy altars and tall teas adorned with faces of boys, made ancestors by casual misunderstandings, we cast images into the air of lives we had only heard tell of via network TV, contraband lyrics pulled from dial-up sessions that lasted hours before parents came home to kick us off the line, jettison the crew back into worlds where words had an irrevocable heft to them, and we were mortal again and anonymous no longer. Several notches above anonymous, Ella Fitzgerald hails from Yonkers. We shed the 2 train, kept our debt. Middle-class intentions fail in Yonkers. I left, wrung my hands, got a therapist. Medicated heads prevail in Yonkers. Whole Foods does not compute. Even our hunger is loyal. It's 1999, no Jamba Juice or kale in Yonkers. My father is a star, prayed the pews to tears last week. Once his love had lifted me, then my faith in blood grew frail. In Yonkers, I bloomed, a manageable stain. Bodies falling maim the night, fist fights gone off the rails. We have no sense of scale in Yonkers. The letter flew like a ghost in a ghost costume through the front door. A scholarship, my last piece of mail in Yonkers. Thank y'all. All right, we're coming to the conclusion. Let me really think about this, yo. Yeah, honey, what poem am I on right now? We tapped in. It's that telepathy, you know? We just been in a crib for like 3 years now, so you know what I mean? So it's there. All right, cool. This is Dad poem number 6, and it's for our doula, Perpetual. Pam is also a doula, La Dulita Boston, Google that. All right, Dad poem number 6. Your doula's name is Perpetual, which is an especially elegant word that means some things are so good they go on long past the might of our mortal eyes. Our affection for you is perpetual. Our attention for you is perpetual. The modern world is not perpetual, and neither is the earth, though my sense is the latter will last much longer. Another word for perpetual is everlasting, and that's one your grandparents love, as it was ubiquitous in hymns we sang when I was barely big enough to lift the red leather books which held our psalms on my own. When I could not manage believing anymore, I read a man named Meister Eckhart. He once wrote, "Every animal is a book about God," or something to that effect. The scale of such love was a revelation. Ubiquitous is an unwieldy word. It means everywhere. Son, you are a palace of books about God. My love for you is ubiquitous. It shines in the eyes of trees outside our kitchen window, beetles giving color to the front yard. Every single brick in the room of your life we are building, even now, as we dream. All right, thank you. All right, 2 more. I want to read one for my dad. That counts as a dad poem, yeah? He's an incredible guy. He integrated his high school. He was 17 years old. Just wanted to go to prom, you know, and be fresh and have a new car. And he was just in the street, you know, Bull Connor and Birmingham PD, trying to destroy his life and the life of the people he loves. And when I think about moral courage, I think about him and how he enlisted in Vietnam because my uncle, who drove the Midnight Blue Mercedes a couple poems ago, the recruiter told him that if my dad went, you know, my uncle wouldn't have to go because it wouldn't take 2 sons from the same family. And of course, that was a lie. But when I think about moral courage, I think about what it means to be 17 years old, having just integrated your high school and being willing to lay down your life for your little brother. My dad got to move into that new house too, so with my sister. So this is for him. It's America Will Be. And then I'll close by talking about my boy, August Galileo. No disrespect to Chaucer, by the way. He comes up in here. It's all love to everyone out there. America Will Be. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second, after Langston Hughes. I am now at the age where my father calls me brother when we say goodbye. Take care of yourself, brother. He whispers a half beat before we hang up the phone, and it's as if some great bridge has unfolded over the air between us. He is 72 years old. He was born in the throat of Jim Crow, Alabama, one of 10 children, their bodies side by side in the kitchen each morning, like a pair of hands exalting. Over breakfast, I ask him to tell me the hardest thing about going to school back then, expecting a history I have already memorized. Boycotts and attack dogs, fire hoses, Bull Connor in his personal tank, candy paint shining white as a slaver's ghost. He says, honestly, probably having to read the Canterbury Tales. He says, eating lunch alone. Now, I hear the word America and think first of my father's loneliness, of the hands holding the pens that stabbed him as he walked through the hallway, unclenched palms settling onto a wooden desk, taking notes, trying to pretend the shame didn't feel like an inheritance. You say democracy. And I see the men holding documents that sent him off to war a year later, Motown blaring from a country boy's bunker, as napalm scarred the sky into jigsaw patterns, his eyes open wide as the blooming blue heart of a light bulb in the Crown Heights basement, where he and my mother will dance for the first time, their bodies swaying like rockets in the impossible dark. And yes, I know that this is more than likely not what you mean when you sing liberty, but it is the only kind I know or can readily claim. The times where those hunted by history are underground and somehow still daring to love what they cannot hold or fully fathom, when a stranger is not a threat, but the promise of a different ending. I woke up this morning and there were men on television lauding a wall big enough to box out an entire world. Families torn with the stroke of a pen, citizenship little more than some garment that can be stolen or reduced to cinder at a tyrant's whim. My father knows this, grew up knowing this, witnessed firsthand the fire bombs, the Klan, multiple messiahs, love-soaked and shot through, somehow still believes in this grand, blood-stained experiment, still votes, still prays that his children might make a life unlike any he has ever seen. He looks at me like the promise of another cosmos. And I never know what to tell him. All of the books in my head have made me cynical and distant. But there's a choir in him that calls me forward. My disbelief, built as it is from the bricks of his belief, not in any America you might see on network news or hear heralded before the start of a football game, but in the quiet power of Sam Cooke singing that he was born by a river that remains unnamed, that he runs alongside to this day, some vast and future country, some nation within a nation, black as candor, loud as the sound of my father's unfettered laughter over cheese, eggs, and coffee, his eyes shut tight as armories, his fists finally unclenched as if he were invincible. Yeah. Thank y'all. He's my model for so much, you know. Because for him, strength and tenderness are inextricable, you know. My pop was a Marine, Purple Heart, the whole thing. And growing up, he would fight people. Like if he saw somebody like beating on their partner, like he would get out the car, like, Josh, go rough these dudes up and get back in the car. I was like, what's going on with you, man? What are you doing? Right? They had this quiet charisma. Like we would go to Dunkin' Donuts and he would get donuts for free, right? I was a cute kid at 4. I wasn't getting no donuts for free, right? I mean, but it was all that at once. It was Josh, take care of yourself. And, you know, you carry the Bennett name. And what that meant to him had nothing to do with celebrity. It just meant we belonged to each other. You know, my brothers and sisters. And that meant so much to me to just understand that from a young age. And becoming a father. I mean, some of y'all know in the audience. I know that y'all know that personally, right? It's like the beauty and the terror come at once, right? And even some of the poems in his book, I try to like wholesale reject some of the language I got when my son was born. Like people say, are you scared to have a black son? I was like, well, actually, I'm just thinking about all the cool dinosaur toys I'm gonna buy and We're getting a bunch of children's books from our friends who are super sweet and chimed in, on the inventory and got us all these beautiful instruments to teach him. And my parents just raised me to have my head on a swivel, as they say, to be shrewd and thoughtful but never afraid. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm thankful for Pam and Alexis and my new family that I have now, because I'm so far from my family in New York, and so I didn't get to see them for 2 years. And I saw my dad mostly on FaceTime, and he doesn't talk as much now that he's older. He's getting up there, but when he does, it's always, boy, you wearing a scarf. It's like his main thing. It's like, are you warm? Are you back to the blankets, I guess, right? Are you warm? Are you looking after yourself? And if you're wearing a scarf, make sure it's fly, Beauty belongs to us too. It's our inheritance. So this is the final poem in the book, Dad Poem 12, The New Temporality. And thank y'all for being great. No poems, not even one, since the minute you were born. Now I live the thing that was the writing more intensely alongside you each day. Hours blur and are measured only in feedings, naps just quick enough to not subtract from your later dreaming. Mom and I divide the night into shifts, dance through the fog of sleep deficits doctors say we won't feel the weight of until wintertime. So what? Our home glows like a field of rushes, moonlight ensnared in their flaxen heads. Most early mornings with you are mine. We play the elevator game and improvise lyrics, rhyming August with raucous, florist, flawless. As I write this, you rest in a graphite gray carrier on my chest, your thinking adorned with language that obeys no order my calcified mind can express. Tomorrow, I will do the thing where I make my voice sound like a trombone, and I hope you like it as much as you did today. There is no sorrow I can easily recall. I have consecrated my life. Thank you. Yeah, I can answer any questions anyone has. You want to talk about anything, or we can close and mix and mingle. Whatever. I got my Pellegrino. I forgot. I had it stashed in advance. So.
Josh.
Yeah, Patrick, please.
One for real, but I noticed you edited yourself in one of the poems. You edited a line.
Oh yeah, the do-rag poem. Yeah, we could talk about that. This isn't botany. That's the line I edit out. Yeah. Brother, we tapped in. I do that all the time. You expose my secret. So all the time when I do poems, I've done a bunch, I'll just take out parts to see how it sounds in performance. And it's my way of keeping the audience on their feet. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Because it's also how I edit the books, right? So I come out of the spoken word kind of poetry slam tradition. And so how I edit the books is I try the poems out on the road. I try them at performances. I try them at readings. I see what lines hit, when people laugh, when they cry, when they not jump in the air, really. Unless we're in South Africa. The South Africans I've met for poetry stuff, they're just like, the energy. Shout out to South Africa. I love y'all. The energy is incredible. People got tambourines, drums, all kinds of stuff, just going ham. I'm like, oh man, we need to bring this to the States. But to your point, yeah, I'm always improvising. Every single time I read a poem. If you heard me read it a week ago, a day ago, 2 years ago, it's gonna be different than the poem I put on stage. I don't know why that is. Maybe too much jazz growing up. I feel like I'm always trying to make the composition something else, in part because it's more fun for me. I'm like, well, let me see how this sounds. I don't like that. I'm gonna do it differently next time. So, yeah. Patrick's in the new book, in the acknowledgments, because he's in my writing group, Langston's Legacy, which that's a group of like Boston, Cambridge Black poets, and almost every poem in here came out of that workshop, man. So thank you for the other questions too, that helped me get to this. Anybody else? Honey, you set me up. She was like, any questions? Yeah, it's all good. That's because you saw me in that Q&A like 2 weeks ago in the Bronx. I was kind of live. It was pretty fun. So I have an installation up actually in the New York Botanical Garden right now. Just gonna plug it while I'm up here, called The Bond of Live Things Everywhere. And it's a celebration of Black nature poetry, sermons, speeches, songs, and it's just been an incredible experience. Pam and I got to go out there to New York, and we had a performance on Daffodil Hill. It's actually the name. Sounds like something C.S. Lewis would come up with. Yeah, so we were like on Daffodil Hill, we were dancing, there was a DJ set, incredible poets like Tango Eisen Martin, who I first saw do a full set actually here with the Woodbury Poetry Room, which is amazing. Marwa Halal, who's an incredible poet, and Taylor Johnson, they all read. Terrence Hayes was there, Leah Penniman, who else? Sonia Parmentier, Araceli Skarmé, so many amazing poets, scholars, thinkers, and Abra Lee, right, who's a horticulturist and a public historian, right? I was like, I gotta get my game up. I need to add another thing. But she told this beautiful story about the distinction between a scrub and a bush and how she got her degree in agriculture from Auburn. And she came back and her grandma was like, oh, look at that bush. She said, Grandma, that's a shrub, not a bush. And she said, girl, we sent you away to get all that education and you'll know the difference between a shrub and a bush. Because it was a shrub. It was not a shrub, rather. It was a bush. And so that lesson just really hit me. Because I think a lot, if you can't tell from the poems, about what we need to unlearn from our formal education, right? The kind of sounds and rhythms that we've known, maybe even since we were babies, right? And now we lose. I think about this with our son and how we're trying to assimilate him into English, right? And into adult ways of knowing and being. We're about to send him off to daycare, and I worry about him because I'm like, boy, you too free, right? Like he just reorganizes the house the way he wants, and I know so much of school is learning to just like discipline the body and the mind. Sit down now, nap now, color now, and I know August Galileo. You know, I've been with little man since he got here, since he flew, you know, into the earth, and it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting experiment, but I know that freedom is our inheritance, you know, so I feel galvanized in so many ways by nights like this, too. Yeah. Should I wrap it up so y'all can go home? Okay.
Suddenly becoming curious about the Jean Jordan question. I'm just gonna walk
Oh, yeah, do it.
But so, the question becomes more curious.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you
provide
provide?
for the study of human life? And then,
Yeah.
then thinking about your life and how you're now a scholar. And there is a sorrow to that
Mm-hmm.
that study, just that remove that you described.
Yeah.
In terms of, and that your son's mind being so free and
Mm-hmm.
the grief over the codification. So the study here becomes quite much more complex
Mm-hmm.
in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
it does, and harrowing.
That's not a question, sorry, I'm just like.
I like it, though.
thinking through it, though.
Yeah.
I had taken your title in just the study of human life, I'd taken it a much more, I hadn't questioned
Philosophical.
the philosophical, I don't know, I hadn't seen, I personally feel a great deal of grief in academia.
Sure.
And
can you not?
And so, how it has removed me from the very things, as you said in one of your poems, now you are living the thing that you,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I just, at this particular moment in, I don't know, somehow I'm questioning this word study,
Yeah.
how it divides,
Sure.
right?
Sure. And I've been trying to figure
This
out.
book has such a
yeah.
unison to it.
Okay.
The crown, the sonnets, etc. I mean, that's forging this unity.
Mm.
But study has the word rationality, reason,
Mhm.
everything divides.
Mm.
So it seems like your work sort of struggles with those two. That
Hmm.
tension.
I think that's
The
right.
study of human life, you would wish it to bring it to to cohere, but it also divides by the very nature of what it is to study.
Sure. And we were just talking about discipline, right? So I think a lot, especially about, as someone who has a Black Studies undergraduate degree, I think a lot about disciplines and the work of disciplines and how I got my undergraduate BA in English by accident. Because I came in wanting to do Black Studies. Once I found out Black Studies existed, I said, oh, that's what I want to go to college for. Someone handed me Cornell West Race Matters my senior year of high school. and I saw on the back that he taught, at the time, African American Studies at Princeton. I said, okay, I know what Princeton is because of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I know Carlton wanted to go, I know Uncle Phil went. So now Princeton, it's on my radar yet again. And what I found is my mom has this picture from Christmas 1992 where I have on a Princeton Tigers sweatshirt. And I think that was also about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But I hadn't thought about Princeton for years until I got that Race Matters book my senior year. And I went to the summer program for Africana Studies at UPenn over the summer. So they basically bring in an entire cohort of students to just do Black studies for a whole summer before we even start college. So there's a bunch of college seniors. And that's what college was for me. And that messed me up once it actually started, right? Because we were here just thinking together about Blackness and diaspora. I was like, oh man, college is awesome, right? And then the discourse changed, right? And I was like, oh, well, what are you gonna do with that? And in my head, I was like, live? I don't know. Like, what are you talking about? My parents both work for the post office. My dad worked 10 hours a day at night and then would come home and be a TA at my school to keep me from getting jumped at school. Right? So what I think of as an abundant life is just so different from a lot of my colleagues, even at 18, 19 years old, and the things I wanted to study, like musicians with disabilities, like trees, right, that appear not just in the poetry, but in the scholarship, like animals in African-American novels, which, you know, when I got to Princeton, people said, why would you write about that? That's shameful. You should write about Black people and their relationship to animals. And I said, well, there's a lot of writers that don't seem to think it's shameful at all. They think it's something that belongs to us, our relationship to the earth. And they think that, you know, what Frederick Douglass say, you know, a horse's heart is much like a man's heart, right? So to me, study produces all of that, right? It's the music I grew up with. It's the poetry, which was not, you know, Wordsworth until much later, right? It was Maya Angelou. It was Phenomenal Woman taped to the front of my sister's bedroom door. It was the preaching of Millicent Hunter in the Baptist Worship Center in Philadelphia, where I would get an Egg McMuffin. Me and my mom would both get matching Egg McMuffins. And we would drive 2 hours from Yonkers, New York to Philadelphia to go to church, to hear this specific preacher preach. Some of the most gifted rhetoricians I'd ever seen in my life. And before that specific sanctuary existed, it was a supermarket, and we prayed over it. We prayed over an empty supermarket that we would be able to afford it, and that would one day become a church. And that's study for me. That's what study produced. The book I grew up reading was the Bible and Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, which I thought was the Bible because my sister had that early edition that was black hardcover with the red pages, right?
We should put that in all the hotels.
Yeah, that's it, right? Come on. It was, but what's one of the central motifs of that book, right? It's flight, and how does it end? You got to take off the stuff that weighs you down in order to fly. And I think the study of these kind of texts, but also the text of everyday life, the text of intimacy and kinship with other people, with saying, me and my father eating collard greens, cornbread, chicken, and mashed potatoes is literature, right? That was the gambit for me. I was like, no, my daddy's literature now, you know? This boy standing in front of the ocean, boom, that's gonna be in the library. You gotta deal with it. That to me, and I'll stop here, that to me was the real value of the letters behind the name, you know? That was the value of the Princeton PhD in so many ways, was that I could just step into a space and people just assume we're doing Shakespeare or something. And I'm like, yeah, we'll do some of that. You know, Miguel Algarín said it. He said he believed Shakespeare was Nuyorican. He said, how would I not use the bard? That belongs to me, right? Tradition is the selection and reselection of ancestors, right? As Raymond Williams might put it. So yeah, for me, that's what it is. It's a way for me to connect consciousness to consciousness with the ancestors who've gone on before and the ones that are among us even still. I feel that presence. I feel my grandma. She was the great spoken word poet I knew when I was 5 years old, and we all had to memorize poetry to come to Christmas. It's not like she would have locked us out the apartment, but all the little kids, you had to perform. And I've had stage fright my whole life. It just wasn't permitted, right? So if I wanted to do some Bobby Brown choreography, I could do that. If I wanted to do a Claude McKay poem, I could do that, or I could sing a song. I was a singer before I was a poet. You know, I would act and I would sing. I would solos in the church choir. I was a bad man, you know. There's Johnny Gill out there. I had some oomph to it too. And yeah, so academia, I love it. I love teaching. I love my students. But I've never forgotten that that's the kind of study that animated me. And it's what made me want to become a professor in the first place, right? That's why Cornel West, people don't seem to understand. I think that's why he makes poetry albums. People are like, why would you do that? You're a genius. You're like the most famous American academic of the past 50 years. He's like, yeah, but I want to live. I'm a jazz man. That's what Cornell would say, right? I'm a jazz man. I want to live. And that was my motto. You know, that and my mom and dad and my big sister, who said there are no divisions. It's made up. It's all poetry, the bird song, the hip hop, the preaching. It's all poems, Joshua. Now go speak that truth, you know, everywhere you go.
Can I add on to that? Okay, so.
Yeah, and then I see the two hands too. Yeah.
Oh, that was nice.
okay?
That was nice. I was smooth. All right. So, poetry is philosophy.
Yeah.
Philosophy is poetry. The rest of the world, although we're here in the U.S., value, love, validate poets and poetry. Latin America, the Caribbean, you talk about South Africa, right? Once you are a poet, you're looked at differently.
Yes.
Right? Here, perhaps you cannot make a movie out of it, so therefore Hollywood cannot really sell it. So there's a problem sort of with poetry. I don't understand it and so forth. So you talk about Toni Morrison, sort of the issues of the weight. And I notice in two of your poems, the one about your son and your dad, there's a recurring metaphor, that of the brick. So, what's the connection, my friend?
Taking bricks? That's so funny. I mean, the first thing I thought of was what brick means in like Black New York vernacular, which is cold. And it's because of the way that bricks hold coldness. I grew up cold. I mean, another kind of motif in my work is not just the blankets, but, you know, boiling the pots because you can't afford heat, turning the oven on and leaving it open, right? Trying to stay warm. I'm trying to build something, you know, Poesis is making, right? I'm trying to build I mean, it depends on what book of mine you read, and being property wants myself, I'm saying Black Studies is a boat. Why did I say that? I don't know. It came to me. I was like, I think we're building a boat together. Right? We're trying to go somewhere. And sometimes for me, it's a spaceship, and sometimes it's a building, right? Right now in this spoken word book, I thought it was gonna be a book about individual figures. It's become a book about buildings, right? About the Black Arts Repertory Theater in school, the school that existed for 1 year in Harlem, about the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, about the living room where Button Poetry was founded, the living room where Miguel Algarín and the New Eurekan poets were editing each other's work, Quincy Troop's living room, which I didn't realize was a concurrent living room. I mean, it was so interesting to me seeing, oh, so they needed a place, right? And that's why Miguel built the Nuyo, right? With a grant. He was like, well, my people need a place. And I'm a professor, I have to go to sleep, right? He said, they're staying over too late. We need a place, we need a building. And I don't know. I think my parents gave me a certain kind of industriousness. So I'm a poetry guy, but I'm always trying to find like the brick and mortar space. I'm like, I think we need a building where we can meet and we can plot and plan. Like my students who are organizers, I'm like, man, turn your phone off. Like you're recording everything by accident. You need a place to meet and just look each other in the face and figure out if you're trying to, you know, organize, unionize the workers here in the diner hall, turn your phone off, leave that somewhere. Meet in a place, you need a place. So maybe that's what the brick is about for me too. Cause I'm thinking maybe that's why I opened the reading with my sister's house. Like, she believed that dream. I was like, yo, I think maybe like our little brother should live with you and we should find a place and we should all like go in on it or like seek it out together. And then for the past year, that's like all we've been working on, you know, which is just find a place with room enough for all of us to be together. And for my father in particular to spend this window of his life with something he could be really proud of and just walk along, just grass, just wake up, spin around the grass, see his grandkids and go back to bed. That's all my father wants to do for the rest of my life. I'm so proud of him and I'm so happy for him, you know? So maybe that's what the brick is about. And that's why it's my dad and my son. It's like, Pam knows this about me. She mellows me out a lot. As soon as that boy was born, he was on a wait list for like preschool, you know? I was looking up like preschools in Massachusetts. I was like, all right, what's the best place for philosophy and poetry? And he just got in, you know, off the wait list. So it panned out. But I was always trying to find a place for him. I was like, my boy, he needs a place with other kids so he can study, but also delight. You know, he could run around and be able to express himself and really dream. I had that, and I'll stop here. I went to this place called the Modern School for preschool, all-Black preschool founded by Mildred Johnson. Her father and her uncle, James Weldon Johnson, wrote the Black National Anthem. Okay, so I didn't know the Star Spangled Banner when I was 4. I knew Lift Every Voice and Sing. I thought that was the national anthem, and it was, and it is, right? But when I think about that, like that's what school was to me, is that we're doing like plays, some of them in French, like doing French musicals and singing together, and it just didn't really, it was kind of like the black church in the sense that who you were in the outside world didn't matter, right? It was like janitors' kids and lawyers and neurosurgeons' kids, and we were all together in this like black independent school singing about how we were gonna make it through, you know, how we were gonna make it over someday. So yeah, maybe that's what the brick is about. Yeah, I think we had a hand back here. Please.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be sitting here and listening to you, and hearing the questions as well. I guess my question is about the natural world in your
Yeah.
work. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's the best.
And
perfect.
you mentioned the botanical gardens in New York and
Yeah.
that commission, and
Sure.
I guess there was a really beautiful description of the eyes in the tree in one of the pieces you read. And I guess I was wondering if having your son, if that's changed anything for you in thinking about the natural world and how he might enjoy it or appreciate it, or what the future might bring, or any of that, if you can
Sure.
speak to that.
My goodness. So we have like 7 trees around the house, and in part because I couldn't go nowhere else, but also because, Pam was back at work, and it was just me and August in the morning, with his illustrious grandma. Shout out to Mary. I hope you're doing all right. She's with our son tonight. I would just go to like the Japanese maple in the backyard, and I would just say tree. And that was one of the first words I tried to teach him was tree. And I would and his grandma does this with him too, but I don't think she's ever seen me do it. She always brings him to the tree in the front of the house. Honey, I don't know if you know this, right? And she puts his hands to the tree, and she says, say hello, Mr. Tree. And he like talks to the tree. And that was never a part of my like spiritual, intellectual practice before we moved, and before my son got here. And now I just literally go outside and I listen to the trees for their wisdom. What do I mean by that? What I said. And I kind of stole that from George Washington Carver, not the language, but the idea. Like when he would talk about cultivating peanuts, people would ask him, like, how did you know the peanut would help save us? He said, the peanut told me. He said the peanut spoke to him from the ground to, teach him how to cultivate them. And I take that super seriously. It's like very interesting to me. So I try to listen to the trees for what they might say and how they might communicate. And I grew up in New York City, like not around much in terms of plants. And really, I think since coming to Massachusetts and even shifting my research focus a bit, I just delight in even texts about flowers. Like Lorraine Hansberry has this gorgeous play called The Use of Flowers. And it's a fable in one act. That's how she titles it. And it's basically set at the end of the world. There's been this nuclear explosion, and there's these like 7 prelingual children in the wilderness, and this old man who's a hermit who somehow escaped the explosion. And he's teaching them language throughout the whole play. And one of the words he teaches them is flowers, and the other is use. And they understand flowers, right? He gestures for the flowers, and they say use. And he's like, well, use, it's hard to explain. It's an abstract concept. And then that's part of how I won't spoil the ending, but it's basically, he tries to explain to them the use of flowers. And he said, the use of flowers is infinite, right? And so it's just something that's been on my mind a lot, is realizing that poets like Anne Spencer, who's an incredible gardener, but the garden was also a site of study and gathering, political gatherings often, right? James Weldon Johnson, W.B. Du Bois, right? The intellectuals of her day would gather in her garden to plot and plan and think and dream and drink together. So that's just been on my heart and mind, how to, as Fred Moten would say, right? Like how to renew the practices of our assembly, and he's citing there, but I love that idea. Like how do we practice getting together, right? How do we get together to practice how to get together, right? That's him too. Yeah, that's my guy. Fred's brilliant. But I love that vision, because I really am seeking it out, like spaces, buildings we could build, but also we can go outside. And I forgot that for a while. I was like, oh, we can go outside. We can go to the botanical garden. We can just go on the street and sit under the shade of a tree, and it's automatic. We could read, we can eat, we can do whatever we need. It's all available to us. And the uses of the earth are infinite too, I think I saw another hand over here, but if not, that's fine too.
I'm getting my exercise.
Nice. Yeah, Darren.
Wait, let me just get you the mic. Just for the recording.
So this question is just trying to dovetail on some things you said before.
Please, yeah.
So you're a poet, obviously, and then you just introduced us to you as a builder and a as a person that's trying to build things. My question is, do you see yourself as a magician? The reason I asked the question is because so much, I mean, in the whole thread of all of your works, it's just like the lived experience, the lived black experience seems so esoteric, especially when you come back into these institutions.
Yeah.
You do these jobs, you got to play the scripts, the white-minded scripts. And it just seems like what you do so well is take that esoteric stuff that we live and you display it in a way that puts people there close enough, but still at the same time, you can't go there, unless you've been there.
Yeah.
So that to me, that's magic.
Wow, brother. We gotta get you to blur up the next book, man. That's powerful. And it's funny too. Darren is in some ways responsible for this book. He invited me out to party the night I met Pam, so I would not have met. Yeah, y'all have never met. Yeah. I told him that. Yeah. I was gonna stay in my crib, but and he was like, "Yo, dude, we gotta come." Yeah, I'm telling you, all the homies are here who helped make this book and our family possible. Yeah, come on, right? Make something out of nothing. Maybe that's where I'll start, right? I mean, I love that idea. There are a couple of things. One, you're making me think about the way the black people I grew up around reacted to magic, right? Which now is kind of a meme, but I love when you do a magic trick and people are like, oh, nah, shut it down, right? Like, even when we would watch David Blaine growing up, we would run away from the TV. We were like, I don't know what that brother's doing. He froze himself in ice. Why? That's scary. Turn that off, right? That's wicked. So I'm interested in the idea, though, of, using words or gestures to manifest what isn't immediately visible. And I think of poetry as doing that, but also gatherings as doing that. And I'm trying to, in the poems, kind of reflect even a shard of like the glory and the grace of the kind of black social life you're describing. You know what I mean? Like Ode to the Do-Rag is about that. I have a poem that's an ode to ankle weights, right? And about, come on, you know it, right? Right, so you're 10 years old, you put your ankle weights on, it's because you want a 40-foot vertical. So me and all my boys, we would just wear ankle weights that's super dangerous. But we all wore ankle weights every day, right? Speaking of Song of Solomon, because we wanted to fly, right? We desired ascension. But I think about that kind of discipline. Like that's a different sort of discipline, right? It's like, no, I'm working on something. I got a project, right? What is that? I'm gonna weigh myself down now so I could fly later. And I felt like that had such literary merit. I wanted to write about it. And I wanted to write about our family members at those games and how no matter what they went through during the week, you see your little man hit a J and it just like falls from you. I said, it falls like a man made of flowers to the floor is what I say in the poem. Like that shame, that guilt, the bills that you gotta pay. You don't gotta pay them bills right now. Technically you do, but not really. Phenomenologically, right? I'm in a space where, no, I'm at the game and I'm in the game and we're together. Which is the point, right? That's actually the point of the game. It's not necessarily about who wins. Again, it's an excuse to get together and to talk about how we get together. So I hope I'm doing some magic up here. I mean, that's high praise. But yeah, I really am trying to engage in acts of transformation, often with pain. I really had to believe, especially at the start of my writing career, that I could turn painful memories into something wonderful. And then I had to make another pivot in the second and third books of poetry and say, what if I was trying to be in the celebratory mode all the time? What would that mean? And what would that cost to say, I'm always keeping my eye on the celebratory moment, especially as a black writer, where I think there are potentially rewards for doing something else. Like there's another representation of black life that I think is like quite prominent, especially in our historical moment, that it leaves out a lot. It doesn't just leave a lot to be desired. I think it evacuates what has made life in the Americas survivable for our folks, right? And if I'm not getting at that on the page, that kind of magic, then I feel like I'm not doing anything at all. So, yeah, thank you. Thank y'all. Woo!